thank you for coming along and bear with me as the 30-hour lack of sleep. I overslept yesterday until 2:30, so I didn't sleep all of last night. So if I do mumble or stuff up a little, please bear with me. Look, as that introduction, my mother and father were both migrants to Australia post Second World War. So my father came to Australia as a very young man. He didn't quite go to the Barossa first. Obviously, he had to do some growing up, and then eventually found the Barossa and felt like southern Italy, where my father came from, which is in Santa Nicola in Calabria. And my mother was from the next town on, which is in Cavallogna. So I'm a first-generation Australian, but still very strong-rooted in my Italian heritage with making pasta sauce and making our own small goods and all of those things. Angus was almost 100% right on the pruning. There's only been 4 people that have pruned our entirety of our vineyard in 50 plus years. My father being the first, with his best and late friend, and now myself and my workmen. And I was not allowed to prune in our vineyard until I was over 25. My father gave me a very tough apprenticeship, if you will. Now, I guess growing up in the Barossa in a time where my father always made our own wine, and my father's family in Calabria have made wine for nearly 400 years, so I'm the 9th generation winemaker in our family. We had that issue of Grenache being pulled out and not a very favourable variety. So growing up in the wine industry, working for other wineries, Grenache was always, I would say, maybe 5th bridesmaid or sitting near the bridal table. And for me, it wasn't right because my father made these amazing wines in garages type situation in our back shed and bottled unfavourably. So for me, it was all about trying to change the perception of Grenache in Australia. So I was one of very few producers of Grenache in year 2000 to start pushing a straight varietal, and this wine that we're looking at is a 100% straight varietal. And I guess the site itself, for that reason, is the fact that it is on 6 feet of sand near the eastern range of the Barossa Valley floor. So we have really warm days. Now, forgive me, I'm not good with Fahrenheit degrees Celsius ratios. So, sometimes we can be mid-30s to high, up into the low 40s. But in the evening, being near that eastern range and the river to our west, we can have a 25-degree difference from day to night. So it's amazing for the Grenache to do its thing and use its calcium uptake through its stems. Now, for me, it's always been an amazing site to work with. I didn't realise until I went and worked for other people and worked with different soils and went, wow, sand's a lot easier to deal with on a daily basis. I guess I'd been making wine for some time, and I always had a vision for this wine, and it actually bears my first daughter's name, which is Maya. There is an accompanying bottle of Shiraz called Ella. I made the wines well before they were actually born. I didn't know what I was going to call them, but after they were born, their personalities kind of matched the wine styles. Maya being a little more generous and soft and polite. The second daughter, probably not so much. Quite tough and resilient, much to my dismay, hence the grey hair. But, it was bringing that to the table with what we have been doing for, 50 plus years in the Barossa. We've never been organic, we're not biodynamic, and I'm not conventional. But when you're dealing with vines that are 176 years of age, it's all about their longevity and what I can do to make them survive. So this is 10 acres of 1848 planting Grenache, and in that entire site, I only have 25 vines that are missing. So it's a very unique site. And when it comes to ancestor vine classification in the Barossa, we make up 3/4 of the entirety of Grenache. All that being said, I guess my dream was to make a Grenache for me that it's one of the world's best aging varieties of wine, and obviously Australia sometimes gets looked over because we are considered the new world with all the old vine material. So I wanted to make something that was special. And for years I'd been thinking about it. And we actually take individual vines out of the vineyard to choose the fruit from. So balanced canopy to fruit ratio, where everything looks right. There is multiple picks of those vines, I should say. Now, we only make a very small amount. So it starts off as 300 litres, so 1 barrel's worth. It only spends about 6 months in 2-year-old French oak. And from there, it is transferred to a stainless steel vessel that I had specially made. And we use 1 mantle of oak in there just for protein. It then sits there for the next 10 years before we bottle it. So I don't check it, we don't look at it, I don't open it, and we just, well, I say we, but I hope for the darn best that I didn't stuff it up. And then we bottled this wine. So this wine was bottled in 2021, obviously harvested and made in 2010. And no whole bunch, no stems, just the fruit, carbonic maceration, always neutral yeast, so from whatever's in our vineyard for the last 170 years, no malic acid. Pigeage is not done for us. We tend to pump over to try and gently, I don't want to break the skins down. We have generosity in Australia. Doesn't mean I want to kill you with it, which can be done sometimes in Australia. So for me, that's what it's all about. And, you know, obviously to be standing in front of you, talking to you guys right in the middle of our vintage, which is a really tough thing to do right now because I've got to fly home and keep going. But to show you my daughter's wine, and she was quite amazed that I'm all the way over here to talk to you about her wine, as she calls it. She is only 8 years of age, but she loves the taste of wine, which is a good thing. And I'm hoping that she's the next generation to take over. But that's kind of, I've tried to keep it quite brief for you, but if you have any questions, even if it's not in this premise now, come and talk to me upstairs. I've got photos and stuff. I'm happy to sit and chat, but thank you for taking the time to listen to me babble with no sleep.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're able to get some more rest before you're back in the vineyard. And absolutely. Were there any questions? We could probably take one question. We're just running a little short on time.
Okay, so I'll try and keep it brief so everyone can get on with their day. Look, for us, obviously, we're 310 metres above sea level, and we're about 70 to 90 kilometres away from the ocean. But that gives us what we call inland Australia, or the mid-north. Now, climately, we tend to have hot days but cool nights, because that sort of central Australia will drop dramatically. So people in the middle of summer, please, this is kind of a gruesome way to describe it, get lost in the outback, and it's 50 degrees, but it can get to 0 overnight. So people die from hypothermia. So at the further north you go, that becomes quite strong. But in the Barossa, we have the warm days but the cool nights. But we also have to look at our soil types as being quite young, even though there's probably a couple of 100-million-year-old soils. They just haven't been overworked over those years and taken away. We haven't had the civilization to basically take from the soil, and we tend to organically plant different types of grasses and turn them back into our sandy sites, because our sandy site is about yay deep. So it's all about that. I've not used herbicides in over nearly 20 years. We are tending to use just more sulphur, trying to stay away from copper and things like that for our vines. We want them to not get built up with heavy metals, but I have weed control by mechanical, so I tend to knife under our vines with a blade to take weeds away, so we don't actually want to water. I have no groundwater, I have no dams, so if we water our vines, it's through your drinking water, so it's extremely expensive. So my theory is take the weeds away, but plant organic matter to build up that soil profile. So that's all we're trying to achieve, and hopefully the wines kind of stand up. We have some of our other wines up there, and it's, yeah, like I said, a real honour to be here amongst all of these people. So thank you kindly.
Beautiful, thank you.